The rand is weaker, extending last week's losses, with analysts citing the negative impact of the 2024 national budget on investor sentiment. Let's get you some analysis now. The Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund Managers, Zwelakhe Mnguni. It's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on, and thank you, sir, for your patience as we were getting to the end of that IEC briefing. So, Zwelakhe, what would have been weighing on investor sentiment insofar as the national budget is concerned?
Look, I think my personal view is that we've got some serious challenges as a country. And I think there was a lot of hope that the budget would come through and essentially indicate, like with huge intensity, that the government is serious about the load shedding situation, the government is serious about job creation and attracting investment. I don't think those expectations were met, and I think the market was essentially disappointed to some extent. I think we are now going to the election season that may produce a hung parliament, which may then create a protracted policy decision-making environment, which would be very bad for investment, but also very bad for the improvement of the local economy through reform. So it's actually there is an element of the U.S., but there is largely the component that the budget was not fair enough to actually get investors excited about South Africa.
Yeah, certainly. Well, the rand has had a sluggish start to the week so far as well. What would be driving those kinds of moves?
Yeah, so as I say, I mean the rand. The United States looks like they are pushing further and further away the timeline for a rate cut, and the market had priced in quite a lot of that, and looks like as they push that away, essentially your interest rate differential between the South African interest rate and the U.S. remains relatively open in favor of South Africa, but nonetheless it is at an elevated level relative to history. So the rand has basically been weakening because people are a bit more cautious and risk. They're avoiding risk at the moment. So we would probably be losing out on bond purchases, and we'd be losing out on equity purchases in our market.
Yeah. And what do you make of Brent crude oil, slightly firmer, $81.13 a barrel?
Yeah, look, I think the Middle East is the catalyst there. I mean, the big situation that we have in the Red Sea is that because the ships are not able to move freely through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, we are actually facing a situation where there is an artificial shortage that is created in the market. So the refiners are buying product or crude. They're buying it well ahead of time to stockpile so they can continue to produce. So I think that is an artificial situation. If we can get a ceasefire in the Middle East, I think we'll probably see oil relaxing a bit to below 80.
Yeah. Libstar, Zwelakhe, has a trading statement for the year ending 31 December 2023. What are you making of those numbers?
Look, I think there was a big improvement in the second half. The overall one-year number was not as great because they had a very tough first half, but there was a strong improvement. And I think one thing to highlight is that it looks like they were able to push through about 10% price increases. So that has helped their margin. They've been very good at managing the cost, but they definitely still have their work cut out for them. I think Libstar is one of those companies that face a challenge that they are a price taker from the big retailers, and they have to increase their capacity utilization. To give you a sense, they generate about 135 for every rand of assets. Tiger Brands and AVI are generating about 150. So it creates a bit of a challenge that their profitability remains suppressed by that. Plus, they are in very cyclical sectors like fruit, which are seasonal harvest products.
Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund, Mubadala Investment Company, has struck a $1 billion deal with Goldman Sachs to go after private credit deals in Asia. Have you taken a look at the specs of this kind of deal?
I could summarize it in one sentence to say it's a hunger for yield. I think what we are seeing is that the private investment market is trying to access opportunities that can give them higher yield, but still the credit type of risk, so not equity. So equity could be volatile, but with credit, your capital is almost guaranteed unless you haven't analyzed your credit risk properly. So what we are seeing is that since 2008, the banks have been a bit more conservative from a lending perspective. I mean, the regulatory pressure has also come through, and that has led the private sector cash stuffed. So where businesses that are fitting to be lend money, they're basically struggling to find good providers of capital. And I think Abu Dhabi Mubadala is essentially plugging that type of gap by going through a partnership with Goldman Sachs, in which Goldman Sachs will run the credit scores and they will put in $1 billion into that fund. I think they've got another arrangement with Apollo, which they put $2.5 billion. Essentially, they're trying to enhance their yields, enhance their returns in an environment where returns are volatile in the equity market, but also the government bond yields have already rallied to high levels, and you need quite a lot to see them giving you higher returns from here.
Listen, it's a lot of zeros that we're talking about here. Zwelakhe, back home, we've talked about the finance minister here in South Africa and the national budget and that kind of impact on investor sentiment here in our own country. We've just come out of a briefing by the IEC as well as we build up to the elections. That's obviously also going to be something that the markets will be watching.
Absolutely, as I said, I mean, people are watching. I think there's two World Cups in this particular case. There's the one on the MK party. What's going to happen to the MK party? On paper, it looks like they're getting quite a lot of traction. The second one is whether the ANC would lose its majority. And I think people are watching that from the perspective of saying, if there is any coalition, which coalition could give us a bit of a productive environment or economic growth that will improve our lives. And there is a bit of a risk there that you could have a situation that might not be palatable. So people are not only watching the IEC from a legal point of view, they're also watching from what could happen, what are the implications for the different parties within the election, the upcoming election.
Yeah, absolutely. Zwelakhe Mnguni, a pleasure talking to you this afternoon, sir. Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund Managers, giving us your latest market update there.